Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest for the second time, where we're looking at their take on the game and leadership aspect of the podcast. Who knows what we might find out, because we all look at this differently, and it's always so interesting to see what the guests have in store for me when I turn up, because we never plan this in advance. So I hope you're as excited as me. Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to this week's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to be joined again by the wonderful Becky Field for her second episode with us. Hi, Becky.
Hello, Paula. Nice to have you back. Have me back, should I say?
Yeah, no. Well, you take over. I'll just sit back.
No.
Go for it. We should turn the tables for a change, shouldn't we?
Oh, no.
Oh, that would be fun. Maybe I'll think about that for a future special. Get a load of you to come in as past guests and ask me the questions for a change.
I'll get you on my warrior podcast.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. I'd love to do it. Yeah, no problem. So, welcome back. So, Westfield Warriors is your group coaching program that you run, and I know we had a good chat about that in your first episode. But today is all about your take on game and leadership together. Obviously, the name is Game of Leadership. Did you know that I'm a total geek for all things sort of sci-fi and fantasy? So hopefully you know where Game of Leadership came from in terms of the name.
Well, I do now.
There you go.
My fella, not me then. I'm into all the real things. Let's kill your husband and things like that on the telly.
That's really funny. A friend of mine's just lent me a book called How to Kill Your Family.
Let's have it.
Hopefully, when I start reading it, it is a fiction book and not a real thing. She's due to get married next year, so hopefully it doesn't say what's in store for her future husband.
I love it.
That's made me chuckle. Anyway, so in terms of game and leadership, what does that conjure up for you, Becky, when you hear them in the same sentence?
Ooh, no, I think when we first initially talked, we kind of like started getting talking about this, didn't we? Because for me, what it conjures up, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is an uncomfortable feeling. I'll be honest with you, because games are usually played, or were usually played, should I say, in the leadership that I've experienced throughout my employed life. So, and probably that's why I've gone self-employed, to be honest. So it's kind of like, so I spoke about this wonderful lady who helped me when I had my burnout, as it were, 10 years ago. Now, she played a different game. She played the game that I like, which is kindness and consideration for people who you work with. And I absolutely understand that not everybody wants to play that game, needs to play that game. You know, they might have different objectives to what they want from their leadership role. But yeah, when you talk about games, it brings back negative vibes, should we say?
Do you know, it's so interesting that you share that, Becky, because when I first thought about the name of this, you know, in my mind, I was like, God, the first thing that sprung to mind was office politics and how people, you know, and I'm going extreme here, like back to the yuppie days of the 80s even, you know, when I was still in senior school, just up to that moment. And then, you know, where people would just, it was one-upmanship all the time. It was all really, for me, unpleasantly competitive.
Yeah.
And I'll tread on you so that I can get up here to where I want to be, regardless of your feelings or your status or your job role or whatever it might be. As long as it benefits me, I couldn't give a stuff about you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it, use the word, conjured up in my mind when I first thought about this. But then I sort of took a step back and I was like, oh God, what else could it mean? And
Yeah.
that's when these kind of other things started coming into my mind. But it's really interesting that that's what it's brought to your mind as well, in that kind of negative experience. Because I know I've referenced the 80s, but honestly, in my career over time, and had a good long stint in hotels and leisure, a good long stint in pharmaceuticals, and now getting to be a good long stint in coaching and what have you.
Yeah.
And I have come across many different people playing many different games, and also those that kind of come at their job and their leadership of themselves in their lives, the leadership of others, leadership of their business or their organization or their team, whatever it might be, in very different ways. And some that just aren't aware and don't want to play any games.
Yeah. And I think that's where the beauty lies, I think, in being self-employed. But there is also a beauty in having leaders who are willing to look at each person as individual and how can you work with them. So rather than play them, how can you work with them and actually see those strengths in these people, and how do they actually work together, almost like a chessboard, or almost, how do you move everything to get the best result? And I think if we think about, if I was to flip it into a positive, then there are, I'm trained as a accredited spotlight practitioner, and that talks about the different mindsets and behaviors of different people. And for me, tapping into that is an exciting game. It's an exciting game where you can go, okay, brilliant. In fact, that's more logical, so we're going to give it to this person. Who can we find to drive this project? We'll give it to somebody whose behaviour style is a preference of forceful, And to me, that's a really clever game, but it's a game based on reality and it's based on preferences and people, and that's where, when we talked in the first episode, we talked about, being all for people or all for production, and I'm actually all for people. So that's a game that I really like, and it's a game that I love to share with leaders when I coach leaders, to share with them, saying, look, this is you as a person, this is how your preferences lie, and yet this is how you can flex and adapt in these other behaviors to suit the rest of your team. And likewise, how your team then, if we work with them as well, can actually work alongside you, and you marry the two together. And that's a brilliant game. And everyone wins.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Becky. It is a brilliant game. That's a great way to describe it, actually. Being able to work with the talent that you've got in the room and make the absolute best out of it. I can't think of a better way to lead your team. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, and a team I'm working with at the moment, we're just re-looking at everything we've got on the table, and understanding the strengths of everybody and the needs of the business, and how we best work out that puzzle together, doing it together. Because why should I sit up here going, right, you do this, you do this? It's really unengaging, boring, and unhelpful for me. You can tell I feel quite passionate about this. The fact that we're all talking together, looking at the problem together, not that it's a problem, but working it all out together, making sure the puzzle pieces fit and that everybody's got something that really engages them.
Yeah.
to move the team forwards for sustainability and growth, it's got to be a win-win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we came on today, actually, I got an email from a headmaster, and he wants me to work with his leadership team, which is just 4 of them. But do you know an absolute pleasure to be able to go, right, this absolutely worked. It's going to be fantastic. And what fills me with joy as well is it's back in my original background of education. And I think, yes, it's going to make an impact not just on their senior leadership team. It's going to make an impact on the advanced tutors, the tutors who are there, the teachers, and then ultimately it's going to make a huge impact on the kids. And I think we talked about the ripple effect of doing something like that, this wonderful game of, like you say, a win-win game. That's what we want, win-win games.
Yeah. And if anyone can hear the doors banging outside, my daughter's out there with her friend doing something that I have no idea what they're doing. So, it's one of those moments. Don't make me come out there.
I can't hear it.
Oh, well, that's all right then. We've had all sorts happen on this podcast, Becky. You're in for a real treat. You'll either get the dog barking or the doorbell going, or the dog barking, the doorbell's gone. The kids mucking around or something else. Someone will come in. And it's not just in my house either. It's in the guests' houses as well. It's real good fun. But anyway, going back to what we were saying, that kind of that sort of being able to almost helicopter and see all those strengths, really embrace, I want to say, the good, the bad, and the ugly for the best of the team. Because let's face it, we've all got the ugly bits and the bad bits as well. Human, we're messy, we're complex.
Yeah.
So
and it's
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. It's a bad view of me butting in. I get so excited like you. I get so passionate about this. But we've all got strengths that we can overplay. I can be quite. If I think about my preference style, I can be, the word demanding is in there. But it's because I'm passionate. But when I overplay that, I become an absolute nightmare, and I know that. And self-awareness is wonderful in leadership, isn't it?
Yes.
If you've got, and it's when there's nothing worse than having a leader who's got no self-awareness, who just, but worse than that, not absolutely caring that they've got no self-awareness either. And but it's an absolute gift to, like you say, if everyone knows, if everybody's transparent, if everybody knows the good, bad, and the ugly in a whole team of each other, but knowing it and accepting it is a different thing, isn't it? But if you can accept it as well, and just go, do you know what? Okay, then that's not their strongest place to work in. So actually, we won't give them that role, or we won't give them that job. And actually, to be honest, looking at that now, it's actually better suited to him or her or them.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, isn't it, of doing this wonderful game of discovery?
It is. And you've just made me think about trust as you were talking there, because if the trust is right, and in terms of the self-awareness, if the trust is right, it helps support self-awareness, is what I'm trying to say. So think about the trust equation in terms of that credibility, that reliability, that intimacy, over the self-orientation, which is that self-awareness piece that we're talking. Got to have the self-awareness for all that to come together and build the trust in the team. And as a team of coaches working together, obviously self-awearness is high. We've had time to build the trust, that intimacy piece, that credibility piece, and so on. So, we're in a really great place to be able to then move that forwards, and be able to work in that way. But it does, what you can't do as a leader is expect that to be immediate. You can't expect trust So that intimacy, that credibility, that self-awareness, etc., to be a given.
No.
You know, you have to work towards it together, support each other. You have to, you know, initially create that psychologically safe space for your team to know that they can show up with the good, the bad, the ugly, and be accepted.
Yeah.
And that it's okay. You know, so many things come into this, you know, the growth or the fixed mindset. It's okay to have that growth mindset, be able to try something, fail at it, learn from it, try again, and feel that there aren't going to be any negative consequences as a result of doing that.
Yeah. And I find as well, being an external coach going into teams or going into organizations, it's a lot, because I facilitate it and I tell the managers, you are part of it, because I facilitate it all, because, you know, I literally strip away the hierarchy, because it's a game on an even keel. It's almost like you say, the flat board. Everyone's, it doesn't matter what you are or who you are, it doesn't matter to me, you know. It's a blank canvas. And that's why one of the exercises I do is actually I take in a massive canvas with loads of paints, and we do a lovely painting from everybody first, you know.
I love that.
And it's just fantastic just to go, right, it's a fresh start, you know. So it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful, isn't it? But like you say, it does start with that self-awareness, and it does take time. And also, I don't know whether you found this, Paula, but as a coach, you know, there's so many coaches, isn't there? You know, we know that. Even to get to a point where we are asked, you and I, to ask to facilitate something like that, has been possibly a journey of sometimes months, maybe years in development, watching on LinkedIn, talking, you know, because that trust needs to be, first of all, earned, doesn't it? It needs to be, you know, and maybe sometimes as leaders, you know, they would test it as well, in the sense of just watching, observing and waiting and seeing. And it's the same with anything, isn't it? Any form of relationships needs to be built slowly for the trust to come, and then you can truly be yourself.
Absolutely right. And I love the fact that you're saying, you know, when you're in that group or team scenario, you know, everybody's the same. It is a level playing field, is the expression I was thinking about. Because, you know, the times that I've gone into businesses and done workshops with, you know, I do a lot of work on connecting people with their purpose. So that sort of team aspect, the individual purpose, bringing it together for the team to all be going towards that collective purpose. You have to do it as a team. You have to all be in on exactly that level playing field. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
No. Have you ever? You will have seen these when you're walking. I don't know whether you've done it when you're driving and you see the wonderful nurseries that take the kids out.
Yes.
All out and they have something to hold on to.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but I love it because they're all just innocently holding on to this thing, and that's what we do. We're pulling everybody in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a visual person. Sorry about that.
No, I love it. I love the visual aspect of it. The fact that you take a canvas in and they all do a painting, that creative side, it's just so lovely to hear about that, Becky.
Well, it wasn't art teacher, so I'll dip into that as much as I can.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm a real artsy person, but must admit, never thought to take a canvas in, but what a lovely idea.
It works a treat as well.
Yeah, I might steal that with pride, as they say.
Yeah.
Really nice idea. And I might get you to show me a few of those one day when we get together in person again.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Well, look, I mean, again, it's so much fabulous value shared there again, Becky. It's been lovely to get an insight into your ideas around game and leadership and what that means for you, you know, and that initial negative connotations. I mean, it's just so interesting because every guest just talks about it in such a different way. So, I don't think I'll ever get bored of this episode, asking people their take on this, because it's just so fascinating to unpick what it means for us, and the more I talk to you and my other guests, the more I learn about what I think about it as well. And the different connections that I make about it. It's fascinating. So once again, second episode, what a gem. Thank you so much, Becky. And I cannot wait for next week when we'll be talking about your pivotal moments.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll see you next time.
You will. Take care.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I always think the game episode is one of my favourites because we get a real insight to our guests' take on their ideas of how games and leadership fit together. Every one of them is different, and just when I think there isn't another take that we haven't thought of or covered, one of our guests comes up with something totally different and unique. It's really exciting. Look, now it's your turn. See what you think, see what resonated with you most. And as always, I encourage you to reflect on what you've heard and see what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and this is Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I really look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.